Hello and welcome to the Three Cauldron Power Centres workshop. I'm so glad you're here. Hopefully you enjoyed the first workshop that we did on journeying and the meeting your guides. And you, as I've said, you'll need those skills in this workshop. So do bear those in mind. There'll be a few moments where I'll ask you to recall that video. So if you haven't watched it yet, I recommend you go back and do that. I know these videos are quite long and they're quite in depth. But even if you have experience of shamanic journeying, really just touching back on the basics and making sure that you've got your 6 safe guiding principles in place is really important. So if you haven't watched that video, go ahead and do that now and then come back round to this one. We have today an amazing piece of ancient wisdom from a medieval poem called The Cauldron of Poesy. And I remember finding this Cauldrons path and being quite excited. As a Celtic person, I've often thought about or pondered the root of my mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional health. And I've explored various systems like the chakra system in India to the Danshins, I'm never quite sure how to say that, in Chinese traditional medicine. However, these maps really didn't resonate for me. I find myself very lethargic and tired and not really excited about the maps, and they were quite complicated often for me as well. So when my guides brought me the concept of the 3 Cauldron Power Centres, it was like a lightning bolt. Finally, I'd found a map that felt like home, something that, it energized me, it spoke to my soul, it sparked a fire, and I discovered how to more clearly understand my access to my spiritual gifts, my access to my intuition. And I found myself through the 3 Cauldron Power Centres, the self that's often hidden amidst the noise of a chaotic inner life. And what I have found is that I see many of my students struggle. Many people know the steps that they should take on a healing path, but can't get going, can't get the motivation. Or they see the steps that they want to take and they take those steps, but then they end up falling back and they never seem to get further than a certain point. So they're either missing the fuel to get going or something is actively holding them back, or both. They know what to do, but they just can't seem to do it, at least not in a long-term sustainable way that creates this lasting change that we all crave. Okay, so tending your cauldrons is one way, one map. It's not the only way, and it's not the only map, but it is a map that worked for me, and it is a map that's worked for thousands of my students. It's a map that takes you from A to B to C to D, etc. It's a structured walkway, so that when you try and make adjustments, say, to your spiritual gifts, and you're really keen to progress in certain elements of connection, but you can't seem to do that, the Cauldrons path takes you on up that walk, takes you on the path that you need to begin in the lower and then the middle and then the upper to access the divine knowledge of the gods, the creativity, the artistry, the power of whatever spiritual gift that you have. We all have them. It's just a case of finding which one is yours. Now, there's one key element in this work. It's often the cause of failure, although we don't like the word failure, but I mean, it does hold people back massively, this key step. And it is that you must focus on yourself. You must make yourself your own number one priority. You must say no to others and yes to yourself. It's so difficult to do, and many people struggle with it. But if you want this pathway to work for you, you have to get sacredly selfish. I mean, I talk about this a lot on my platform. I talk about it in the Cauldrons Way membership. It's one of the things it's the first thing I teach, is to dig where you stand and to learn how to look after yourself. Because if we cannot look after ourselves, we cannot look after others. We cannot be in service to humanity and to the wider world if we are not in service to ourselves first. Okay, so the path has really been quite transformative for me. I mean, I'm here doing this as my job, which is amazing. I'm so grateful and I just love it so much. It's been transformative for thousands of my students. And I've a very deep faith that the Three Cauldron Power Centres offers a powerful internal energy map that aligns with Celtic roots. It's brought me solace, it's brought me freedom, and I invite you to join us all on this journey. So if you feel called to explore your inner landscape in this way, then the Cauldrons path is open to you. And before we get any further, you do not need Celtic lineage to be here. Our ancestors travelled, and that is absolutely evident, and all of the archaeology is evident. You know, I saw a necklace from Tunisia the other day that was found in Scotland, and it's 5,000 years old. Our ancestors travelled. So there, if you love this work, there's actually a really high chance that one of your ancestors potentially travelled and learned with Celtic people or lived with Celtic people for a while, and it's sewn into your ancestral memories. Just because you don't have direct lineage, it doesn't mean you don't have a right to connect with this work. So if that's a concern of yours, you can put it to the side. So let's think about now the power, the powerful energy map that is rooted in Celtic heritage. This solace and freedom and deep alignment with your own landscape, with your own inner life, is what will get you to the point where your spiritual gifts can flourish, thrive, and grow. And whether that's just for yourself, your family, or your wider community, it really doesn't matter, because spiritual gifts are a birthright of all human beings. We just have to find a way to get to ours. Don't forget that we will be using our shamanic skills that we learned in the Introduction to Celtic Shamanism workshop. So keep those in your mind as well. Now the cauldron. The cauldron, it just makes so much sense to me that the cauldron is the vessel that is used to map our inner landscape, right? It's just so transferable. So in Celtic cosmology, the symbol of a cauldron is an important motif. It's found in folklore, in myths, in poems, in artistry. The cauldron of Dagda was a magical vessel that was said to provide an endless supply of food to those who possessed it. It was one of the 4 treasures of the Tuatha De Danann brought to Ireland from the other world, and it could revive dead warriors. So there's that sense of like representing rebirth and rejuvenation. That's an Irish story. And then there's the cauldron of Ceridwen, and Ceridwen is a Welsh goddess who possessed a magical cauldron that was said to grant wisdom and knowledge to those who drank from it. You know, the stories all show the cauldron as a vessel of great power for those who know how to be courageous and to face their inner landscape. But the cauldron is also a really simple vessel. It was used by everyday Celtic people to cook food, to sustain families, to provide sustenance. I like to really remember this because it brings a grounded earthly aspect to this work, which is absolutely essential. It's the everyday essential nourishment that sustains life, and that is just as important, if not more so, than the headier spiritual aspects of a transformative path. So, how does it work? As I mentioned, the system was taught in a poem called The Cauldron of Poesy. You know, you can get, there's a fairly well-known translation online. There's also a less well-known medieval transcript that you can find in the additional resources section if you want to read that. So that's the root. The root is a medieval poem, and you read this poem and you're just like, wow. It's like ancient knowledge that just drips through every word. So it really is worth reading. And the system of tending your cauldrons involves receiving messages from spirit, which you need to get your skills on point, whether through a journey or some other intuitive connection like omen walking or putting messages into action in everyday life, and a divine balance between the divine feminine mystery of spirit and the divine masculine of action. So taking action is key. It's the simple everyday changes that you make based on the information you receive from spirit that you learned in the first video that will align and fill your inner cauldron power centers with strength and vitality. So what I'm going to do in this workshop is I'm going to go through each cauldron. I'm going to give you some information about the cauldron, and then I'm going to give you some ways that you can work with your 3 cauldrons. And we will start with the lower cauldron, also known as the cauldron of warming or incubation, and in Gaelic, Cori Goriath. Now, although the poem makes no mention of where in the body the cauldrons are found, there's a general consensus that the first cauldron can be found in the lower region of the abdomen. This cauldron is upright from the moment it comes into being, and it gives you support when you're young. It marks the beginning of your life's journey. And although this cauldron is upright and full at birth, it usually doesn't stay that way, unfortunately. So the child within whom the cauldron sits requires tending by loving, available caregivers. To retain this gift from spirit, a loving and nourishing environment is essential, and unfortunately that's just often not the case in our fast-paced, stressed-out Western culture. And I think young children are left alone too soon, they're rushed to independence too fast, and they're no longer held close, both physically and emotionally, until they're ready to find their feet as individuals. Cori Goriath, the cauldron of warming, is where the root of self lies, right? This is where your programming happens, where your unconscious beliefs and values take hold and can drive unwanted behaviours like self-sabotage, procrastination, all those good ones. It's the place where you can discover the truth of how you see yourself, whether or not you're aware of it or you fully agree with it. It can be tough. But the path supports a rewrite of this lower vessel. It cleanses and clears it of unwanted versions of you. Lower cauldron work is a slow pressing of an inner reset button. And the types of lower cauldron work that you can look at can be things like nervous system reset and regulation. It's finding a sense of safety in your life. And honestly, this is so simple and people just really overlook it. But listening to your basic and base needs. Thirst. Are you thirsty? Drink some water. Do you go to the bathroom when you need to go to the bathroom? Do you eat when you're hungry and stop when you're full? Okay? It is one of the simplest yet most annoying things I've ever learned that had such a profound effect on my lower cauldron work, because when I realised that I didn't pay attention to things like going to the bathroom, I'll go in a minute, I'll go when I'm finished this. And as soon as I started just going, when the need arose, I became way more connected to my body, way more able to deal with. Weirdly, shame came up a lot in that part of the work as well. It really helped me with my procrastination and self-sabotage. There was all kinds of things that it really helped with. So the healing work for lots of difficult behaviours will begin in the lower cauldron with very simple things. And again, I've mentioned this already, but we want to dig where we stand. Okay, you want to stop trying to save others and prioritise your own healing. You want to try and recognise distractions, habit and numbing behaviours that divert your attention from healing. And things like facing the uncomfortable, toxic thought patterns that you might have, such as the role of the saviour mentality and the drama triangle. So this is one thing I'm going to go over quickly today that just is another thing, along with listening to your base needs, your basic needs, can be really helpful when you at the beginning of a path or when you are struggling to step out of certain behaviours. The drama triangle can be really helpful. So the idea is a model developed by a psychologist called Stephen Cartman in the 60s. And it shows how people get caught up in these unhealthy dynamics. So there's 3 roles in the triangle. There's the victim, who are oppressed, helpless, hopeless. They can't take any responsibility for themselves. Like, they seem to have no power or control over anything in their life. They often have crippling fear and depression and anxiety, and they have a very strong, very powerful negative inner dialogues, usually about themselves and often about others as well. And they need lots of attention. They can be considered energy vampires. They're the type of person that you sit in their company and you leave feeling exhausted. And then there's the persecutor, and they can be aggressive, angry, judgmental. They might work with put downs, shame, blame, manipulation. And they seem to attach their self-worth to control, to power, to winning, to always winning. And then the third archetype is the saviour. Chronic people pleasers, unable to use no, unable to say no. And they tie their self-worth to being needed, to being in service to others. So they'll often take over the thinking and problem solving for others. They'll do more than their fair share. And they play the martyr by taking on way more responsibility than they need to. And that they don't want to take on either. And they really believe that the victim cannot solve their own problems and they should do it because they'll do it properly or better. Now, as I read through these roles, I wonder if you were thinking of how they relate to other people or how they relate to you. So as a reflection point, when learning or reading about these different roles, it's also all too easy to look outward and to think of people in our lives to whom these apply. And although that's a great starting point because it can be really helpful to see where the people in our life exhibit these behaviours, if you are regularly finding yourself in drama in your life, you will absolutely embody at least one of these, if not more. And they can move around. You know, the idea is they can move around. So I would invite you to turn the question inward and ask, what roles do I recognise in myself? And it's that kind of reflection that can begin to help the lower cauldron. And then later, when you get to the middle cauldron, you can use the drama triangle further and more practically when we're working with other things. But as a thought experiment for the lower cauldron, just think about where you lie in that and how perhaps you can start to make some simple changes away from the victim, the saviour, and the persecutor, whether people doing it to you or acting like that with others. Now, there is a journey here that you can do. So in the previous workshop, you learned how to go on a journey. So I'm going to give you an intention for a journey so that you can undertake it for yourself. And then once we've done that, we'll move on to something called recapitulation. So we've got like a couple of quite practical things that we're doing right now. So undertaking the journey, your intention is to meet your conscious mind and experience thoughts as energy. That's all it is. So you can write that down. My intention is to meet my conscious mind and experience thoughts as energy. And this journey, or ceremony, because it is a ceremony, aims to facilitate the release of negative thoughts and emotions simply by showing you negative thoughts and positive thoughts look like as energy. It's a really cool journey to do, and it can be really helpful just to make that shift away from some of the more negative thought patterns that do still affect your lower cauldron. So if you just remember to follow the 6 guiding principles of safe practice, enjoy the journey, just remember that not all journeys are fun, comfortable, or clear. This stuff takes practice. But I think that it's really great to just jump in and get started. So don't forget, you've also got drumming tracks in your additional resources section as well. Okay? So make a note of that, and if you feel drawn to do that journey, give it a try. Another really great tool for lower cauldron work is something called recapitulation. Now, recapitulation is a shamanic practice. It's originally Toltec, which is South America, and I know this is a Celtic page, but we all share. I share with colleagues, and they use some of my teachings, and I use some of their teachings because we share and we use what works. And I haven't found anything as good as recapitulation for shifting and releasing emotional attachments to past events. I have adapted this slightly because I have ADHD and the original is quite long and there's lots of steps and I couldn't manage it. So over time, I have adapted it to be much more simple. All of my students use this. They all love it. And one of the things people say is that they had memories that they were so ashamed of that haunted them so badly, they thought they would never be free of them. And often now they can't even remember what those memories are. So this is highly effective and I do recommend trying it. So how does it work? So you would choose a memory. You start with something easy, okay? But that still raises an unpleasant emotion. And I'm not sure what that would look like for you, but for me, perhaps, I was still quite sad when my childhood dog died. I still often felt quite sad about that. So I started with that sort of thing, recapitulation. I'm not traumatised by it necessarily, but it still makes me feel sad. So then in your mind, you go back to that place in time. You feel your way through the memory. You don't push anything away. You allow the feelings to flow through you, even if they're unpleasant. And then when you're fully in the memory, begin to purposefully breathe out anything you have taken on that does not belong to you. That's it. And when you breathe in, you're breathing in anything you lost at that moment. So you're not focusing on what you took or what you lost. That is very important because you just get in your own way at that point. The guides are doing the work. So you're breathing out anything you've taken on that doesn't belong to you, and you're breathing in anything you lost in that moment. So you do that for as long as you can. You might only manage, 10 seconds or something. Might get too uncomfortable. That's fine. You can be done. You could do this in very little chunks. You might be able to do it a bit longer as you practice, and that's good. And then at some point, your mind will sort of go off somewhere else. You'll start thinking about other things. That's you done. You don't have to keep dragging it back. You can if you feel like it's necessary, but it usually isn't necessary. You can just let it go. That's you done at that point. Okay, you might have to visit memories more than once to fully recapitulate the moment. And it might be that you have quite a long list. So again, start with the easier memories and work your way up. Once you get trust in the process, work your way up to those more traumatizing, difficult memories. Then, once you've done that, you are ready to recapitulate things that happen on a day-to-day basis. Skipped ahead too soon there, sorry. You're ready to potentially recapitulate things that happen day to day so that you don't end up in 10 years with another load of stuff to recapitulate. You can genuinely, pull yourself back to this place of centre at the end of the day if something unsettling's happened. So the benefits of recapitulation is it reshapes your emotional connection to past events, can release unconscious cords and binds, beliefs and agreements, and it helps you to reclaim essential life force and vitality that you're missing from your lower cauldron. So that's often one of the things that you'll breathe back. And if you do recapitulation regularly, you'll very quickly begin to see the change. Okay, and then disclaimer, please. If you have PTSD or CPTSD or other trauma-related diagnoses, this technique should be approached with care. Now, such a diagnosis doesn't prevent you from using recapitulation at all. Many of my clients have complex and chronic trauma issues and they've found great success with recapitulation, but take it easy. Start with easy memories, work up to the hard memories, and always calling your guides and protectors to sit with you when you're dealing with big issues. So you know what you can handle, so please be sensible. Okay? Great. Right, so on to your middle cauldron of vocation, Cori Erma. Now, this cauldron is likely found in the chest area and it's on its side at birth. And the cauldron, one of the jobs of the Celt is to turn this cauldron upright. And you do that by intentional living and experiencing the great joys and the deep grief that life can bring. This cauldron is related to emotional intelligence, to grounded everyday wisdom. So, like the people in whom this cauldron sits upright feel safe and nurturing to be around, you know. Now, to feel fully, to live freely, and to love fearlessly is such a great challenge for many. Meaningful connection and vulnerability among our trusted friends and family is not the usual state of affairs. And we're taught little in our society that will really have a positive effect on our middle cauldrons, right? So this cauldron is the place of shadow and emotions. It's how we present ourselves to the world. And many people struggle with being seen, with being vulnerable, with setting boundaries, with meeting needs day to day. Now, it is possible to fill this cauldron with confidence, with stress-free interactions, with not having difficulty with conflict, for example. And it's also the centre of motivation and drive, vocation, right? It's where you will find your ability to follow your calling and your soul's purpose. So to cleanse and clear and refill this cauldron, focused, conscious work is required, first supported by lower cauldron healing in the first instance, before we move up to the middle. So there are various ways to work with the middle cauldron, but I'm going to give you some examples today so that you can start to get a sense of the things that you can be doing to support this middle cauldron. Boundaries. It's my favourite word. As anybody who learns with me will learn, boundaries is my favourite word. Personal, mental, spiritual, physical, emotional, all the boundaries. They work so well. Boundaries are like magical and they deeply resonate with every student and every client I've ever worked with, actually. Now, the lack of appropriate boundaries can significantly drain your middle cauldron energy. But what exactly are boundaries? Well, they're personal limits that you set to delineate what you're comfortable with and what you're not comfortable with across like various aspects of your life. Personal space, emotional well-being, time, energy, spirituality. Essentially, boundaries are declarations of your autonomy, of your self-respect, and it allows you to guide people how they must treat you. So implementing boundaries is crucial for maintaining your mental health, self-respect, the quality of your relationships. You know, you can have reciprocal boundaries where you work together with people in your life. And these reciprocal boundaries can contribute to beautiful, harmonious relationships. They facilitate a dance of mutual respect and understanding, where each person's needs and boundaries are acknowledged and honoured. By contrast, the absence of boundaries leads to resentment, misunderstandings. It can lead to, and often people with low emotional maturity end up in fights and arguments and can't see that a lot of the issues that they're having in their life is caused by themselves. It's caused by not having clear communicative boundaries. It's caused by expecting those around you to have a crystal ball. I can't believe they didn't do this thing. What thing? Did you ask them? Did you tell them what you wanted, or did you just expect them to know? Because that's like not good. It's not okay. So there's lots of ways that you can deal with boundaries. So clearly communicating your boundaries, staying consistent, enforcing consequences. I sound like super nanny or something, but that can be things like, do you know what? It really upsets me when you're late every time we meet for coffee. If you can't be on time, I'm going to have to stop meeting you for coffee. I feel that strongly about it. Can you work with me? And they don't work with you and they're consistently late again, then you have to stop meeting up. That would be a consequence. And it would also cover the next strategy, which is limiting interaction when necessary. Okay, reevaluating relationships, self-care practices. And I'd just like to touch briefly here on the idea of kindness, because kindness and boundaries often are linked. So people will say, I don't want to be unkind. I don't want to put up a boundary because it will be unkind. I don't want to say to my friend, I'm not going to stop seeing them for coffee because I don't want to be unkind. Well, my question or statement there is, well, how about when they disregard the boundary you've clearly communicated and they don't show up in time? That's not kind. And you're betraying yourself in the small moments by allowing that disrespect. So you're not being kind to yourself. So what you're actually saying there is, I am scared of conflict. I don't want to be in conflict. And that is something that for middle cauldron work is essential to get a hold of. You have to learn how to face conflict. And one of the ways that you learn how to be good with conflict is to start in the lower cauldron, actually. So once you feel safe in your own body, once you've dealt with your nervous system, your fight, flight, freeze responses, and you've got that, it doesn't have to be perfect, but a bit better than it was, you'll start to find that conflict doesn't seem so difficult. Okay? So I've pulled out some statements here that you might find helpful, okay, to practice. So things you can say are, I'm focusing on my spiritual growth right now and I need space to do that. I'm going through a transformative phase. I need your love and support, not your judgment. I need to keep money for my bills and I can't lend it to you. I'm not comfortable lending out my personal items. My resources are limited, so I have to be cautious about how I use them. I would appreciate it if you didn't talk to my mum, friend, co-worker about my private life. I prefer not to say. I'm not comfortable discussing that topic right now. I feel shut out when you take over the conversation. I feel undermined when you bring this up in front of everybody. Next time, please talk to me about it privately. So if you're beginning to bring boundaries into your life, one of the things that you can do is you can practice in front of the mirror. You can go online. There's plenty of boundary statements. People write blogs on this all the time. Grab some of these ideas that you like and that are resonant to the situations that you're facing and practice. Practice in front of the mirror. It's actually really effective. So the next thing that I want to talk about is the idea of kindness is often linked to being an empath. Now, many people describe themselves as empaths. Oh, I'm an empath. And I'll often hear phrases like, they're very sensitive to other people's emotions. Things can become very overwhelming. Empaths often feel drained. They struggle with boundaries, actually, and they experience difficulty in distinguishing their own emotions from the emotions of other people. They struggle with large crowds. They struggle in social situations. And that was me. I couldn't really go shopping or, into large crowds, or I just found myself picking up the feelings of everybody around me, but I didn't realise that's what I was doing. So I just had this tsunami of often negative emotions, anxiousness, and various things that were not mine. And I would often orient to the most difficult person in the room, because my trauma would have me scan the room, and I would link into, unconsciously by the way, the most damaged person in the room, because they were the most dangerous to me, to my subconscious mind. So what I learned how to do to help me to become an empowered empath as opposed to an enslaved empath, because I was absolutely enslaved, was I learned how to work with my guardian guide, which is a really important thing to do when you're doing middle cauldron work. Now, the guardian guide is an amazing guide and can help you become an empowered empath, because it will shield you from the energy of others, and it will allow you to live a much more normal life without having to worry about everybody else is flinging around all the time. And the benefits of that are you have more energy, your intuition is more precise, it's pointed to the right things for you as well. Your sense of inner personal power and confidence will grow. If you work in the healing field, you'll become a more effective holder of space, and you'll empower others because you will inspire the ripples of potential. They can choose a different way to interact with an empowered empathic ability as opposed to being enslaved. And I want to share how you can meet and work with your guardian guide today. So essentially, you can go on a shamanic journey. So this is another thing that we learned in the first video, right? So your intention will be, I want to meet and connect with my guardian guide. Simple as that. And then you can also ask your guardian guide to show you how they protect you energetically in the journey. And that can be really useful. Now, just a few things to say about guardian guides. Your guardian guide is a filter, not a wall. It's not going to stop you experiencing connection with others at all. It's not going to protect you necessarily from experiencing the things you need to experience in this life in order to learn and grow. Okay? But what it will do is it will protect you from other people's thoughts, feelings, projections, and thought forms. And it's so handy for those of you who struggle with the empathic ability that you can't quite manage. So again, just a reminder, remind yourself of the 6 guiding principles of safe practice that you learned in the first workshop. And then go ahead, go on a shamanic journey with the intention to meet and connect with your guardian guide. Drumming tracks are available in the additional resources section. And your guardian guide can come through as many things: animals, myths, legends. There's a funny story that I got sent one time of a lady who said her guardian guide was a wardrobe, like from Lion the Witch in the Wardrobe. She would open the doors and get in and shut it, and this wardrobe would be around her as she would go about her day. So be really open to whatever comes through for you, for your guardian guide. And then you can connect with your guardian guide in the morning when you wake up. You can ask your guardian guide to protect you when you go out. You don't have to remember it's there all the time. It will just be there if you intend it to be there. And you will see probably a huge difference in your energy levels and your ability to manage things. Okay? So as always, guides are there to be connected with, to build relationship with. So take your time, go back a few times to meet your guardian guide if you need to, write notes, draw it. If you're a drawer, write about it if you're a writer, think about it if you're a thinker, and just grow a relationship with this guide to help you in your day-to-day life as you work in your middle cauldron. Great. All right. Now we are on to the final cauldron, upper cauldron of wisdom, Cori Soish. Now this cauldron, thought to be found in the head, is upside down at birth. and it's absolutely the toughest to turn. Now, developing your spiritual gifts, your connection to nature, and your connection to your spiritual team is the way to experience this cauldron righting itself and filling, along with doing the lower cauldron work as well. And as this cauldron rights itself, you begin to receive Imbaz Farosni, or the divine knowledge of the gods. Interestingly, as the Celts believed in reincarnation, it's been suggested that this cauldron is upside down at birth in order to empty everything learned from past lives so a person can enter their new body free from any burdens, which I think is one of the reasons that past life work doesn't really work in Celtic tradition that I've found. I want to discuss something that happens quite regularly. There's a tendency to want to bypass the work of the first two cauldrons, right? And certainly the second cauldron, to leap straight into developing spiritual gifts and connecting with divine knowledge. And this approach will often go quite wrong. And it can be the cause of shamanic ego taking hold, right? And a person for sure might gain some insight and knowledge if they don't do lower cauldron work. We see it all the time. But the cauldron will be unsteady. It will be full of things other than Imbas, Rosnate, and it can become dangerous, and it can result in practitioners who abuse their power in their communities. Another sign of untended lower cauldrons in relation to the high cauldron is when a person, if you discover you have a spiritual gift, but you lack the confidence and the drive to really use your gift for the good of your community and for the good of your family and for the good of your abundance, because we love to be abundant, then there's a really good sign. That's a really good sign that you shouldn't be in the upper cauldron yet. You need to go back down to the lower two cauldrons and do some work there. So when you're in search of, or you want to develop a spiritual gift, or you have one, but you're kind of stalling with it a bit, usually it means that there's more cauldron work required, and it's cyclical. You know, we don't just do 1, 2, 3, boom, we're done. This is a lifelong cycle. So you'll find yourself making your way up and perhaps being steady and connected and lovely for a while, and then things get rattled and stop working so well, and it's like, right, okay, back down we go to the lower cauldron. And you know, I'm a student of life. Like, I'm always finding new things to learn and grow and develop within myself, but I work methodically, right? So each time a new issue arises for me, I start with my lower cauldron to see where the root of the problem lies, and then I move to my second cauldron to work out what behaviour it makes me exhibit, and then onto the upper cauldron and how do I develop meaningful understanding and ultimate healing for this issue. So there's a rhythm. There's a rhythm to cauldron work. I've revisited my lower cauldron many, many times when my unconscious fears would make themselves known. It's not a one and done deal, all right? And just as an aside, one thing I do think about sometimes is that, you know, there's a sacred, 3 is a sacred number in Celtic cosmology, and there's recent research showing that we have 3 brains in our bodies. We have the gut brain, the heart brain, and the head brain. I just love that. So the lower cauldron likely corresponds to the gut. You know, when we have a gut feeling, we just know. You know, children are instinctual beings, and when they're nurtured and loved unconditionally and they have an amazing way of bringing forward the obvious that adults around them will often miss. And it's that kind of like gut knowing that children are often connected to more than we are. And then the mid cauldron being heart centered, connected to the loving center of our inner power. Boom, boom. The thing that drives us forward, that moves our sacred vessel. And then the upper cauldron relating to the brain, the seat of knowledge, wisdom, and the gods. And you know, our mind physically and our upper cauldron spiritually can't function without healthy gut heart connection, without instinct, without loving connection. It's just fascinating. I always like to throw that in somewhere if I can. So back to the upper cauldron, so bass and creativity. So as you journey through life, you will encourage various challenges that will test your creativity, that will test your resourcefulness. So whether you're an artist, a writer, an entrepreneur, a teacher, a lawyer, an accountant, a civil servant, a bus driver, whatever it is, Corey Soish, the upper cauldron, holds the key to unlocking your creative and spiritual potential. And imbas means inspiration. It refers to the divine flow of creativity that ignites your imagination and fuels your passions. So the upper cauldron represents your connection to the divine and is the source of your intuition and your spiritual insights. And accessing it isn't easy, as we all know. It requires this deep understanding of self and just a willingness and a need, a driving need to confront fears and limiting beliefs and all the other things that are hidden in our landscape. We must be willing to face our shadow and to embrace our vulnerabilities on this mission. And it's a mission in the upper cauldron towards joy, actually. In the poem that this system comes from, in the main, there are two divisions of joy described. The first is divine joy. So that is a joy that transcends the mundane and touches the soul. And to experience divine joy, you have to cultivate a relationship with the unseen realms through journeying that we learned in the first workshop, through meditation or other spiritual practices. And this connection allows you to tap into a higher wisdom. Doubt. Doubt can be a significant obstacle to experiencing divine joy. So building trust in your connection to the unseen realms and having faith that you're being guided in the right direction allows you to let go of control. It allows you to surrender to the flow of life and therefore to joy. And I think it's important to say that divine joy isn't limited to those who are religious or like super spiritual in the traditional sense. It's available to anybody who's open to the possibility of something greater than themselves. Parents, healers, creatives, business people, writers, scientists, teachers, gardeners, any profession can know the joy of imbas. And the second type of joy is human joy, which is a complex emotion that many people avoid. Actually, it's surprising. It's a powerful feeling that brings contentment, peace, and harmony. And we cannot be in joy at all times. It's fine. We're living human lives. It's okay. But one thing I do see is that people do run from human joy. So an example I'll sometimes give is if you're at a party, family gathering, something like that, are you always busy? Are you always busy? Dishes, tidying, organising, getting things, making sure everybody's okay. And then maybe you get to the end of that gathering and you think, did I talk to anybody? Did I make any connections? Probably maybe not. Maybe you were running from joy. Perhaps you find it difficult to be joyful around your kids because you're too busy, you're too stressed out. I recognise that one. So there's a really cool thing that the holistic psychologist, she is on Instagram, I can never remember her name, she's written a lovely book though. She talks about glimmers of joy, and it's about noticing when you're having a tiny glimmer of joy and just stopping for a second. Like I'm having one right now thinking about you guys watching this. It's so nice. So that's one way to start, is to watch out for teensy glimmers and just allow them their moment, even if it's a few seconds. Allow the moment to just be, enjoy. Another thing that's very important for your upper cauldron when we're finding and allowing joy is to live by your values. and also to create meaningful connection with others as you do so. Courage is a great value of the Celts. So living by your values does take courage, but first it means identifying what is important to you and then aligning your actions and behaviours with those values. So when you live by your values, you create a sense of purpose and direction in your life. They're like a beacon. So developing values can be very helpful in all of your cauldrons, actually, but particularly when we're talking about connecting to divine wisdom. If you don't have values or live by values, then you're going to really struggle to know yourself well enough to connect in a way that I know we all want to. And then I mentioned, forming genuine connections with other people. And we live these busy, fast-paced lives. We might not have the time or energy to invest in building friendships, but it's so important to prioritise connection and community in our lives. And this is for your upper cauldron. This is for the work that we do to allow us to connect with our spiritual gifts. So like recreating an interdependent village is a pathway to joy. So we're not meant to live in isolated little bubbles without the wider support of a trusted community. In modern society, we've lost this sense of interdependence, and many people feel that I talk to, they feel disconnected and isolated. We evolved for millennia in small, interdependent communities where each member had a role to play in the survival and the well-being of the group. They knew what their role was, they knew what their place in the world was. And that's very difficult to find in this day and age often. So like the community that we've built within the Cauldrons Way course and community, that's where we accept that we live in a modern world. So we've found new and exciting ways to create community, to create safety, to create joy, and being connected with other like-minded humans. So the Cauldrons path will lead you through life by the hand, a bit like the parent we should have had and didn't have. You still need to do the work. There's no magic wand. You'll feel emotions and depth that you never thought that you'd be able to touch again. You'll feel so high and you'll feel so low, and it'll be so difficult and shameful sometimes, and yet other times it will feel like you're really touching the stars. It's an amazing pathway to walk. But what you won't feel is confused and adrift. You won't feel like you're drowning in a sea of conflicting advice, ideas and directions you could take and things you could do. So this is an ancient pathway that sets you up for success, because you learn how to not only thrive, you learn how to do it methodically, step by step, so that all of the effort that you put into your healing path actually makes a difference in your life. It moves the needle in your life. So we're nearly at the end of our discussion for today, our workshop for today, but there's a few things that I'd just like to share before we go, okay? Some final encouragements. So you've learned that you do not need any experience to use what you've learned in these videos. I haven't gate-kept anything. This is everything you need to dive in, meet your guides, go on journeys, and connect with your divine spiritual nature as a human being. It's all here. This is what you need. Now, what you need to do is practice. That's it. You just need to try it, and it's all here. So I do encourage you to go away and do it quickly. Try a journey by yourself quickly, or go back and do the journey that I guided and try it a few times to get your confidence up. But you've got it. You've got everything you need now. You are safe as a button, as my granny used to say, when journeying with the 6 guiding principles of safe practice. I have journeyed for years. I've been in some very hairy and sticky situations in my life, and I have never been let down when I follow the 6 guiding principles of safe practice. And I have thousands of students who say the same. So there's no need to worry about safety. You're covered. let's not forget that everyone is welcome here. Everyone who is drawn to this work is welcome. Our ancestors travelled. Our ancestors are curious, interesting creatures souls who, will never know we'll never really know what they did, how they lived, what they thought. But we know how we think, we know how our brain works. And so if you're drawn to this work, listen to your calling. You're absolutely welcome here, regardless of your lineage. If you do not have access to nature, this is the big one people worry about, it does not matter. Animism is the sense and knowing that everything has a soul, everything is animate, everything has spirit. You could be trapped in a metal box and you could still journey and connect to the spirits of the land and to all things, because everything is connected. And we know that. So if you don't have time or access to nature, then that's okay. You can dip into this really simply in 5 minutes. You can connect with your guardian guide when you're doing your dishes. You can listen to beautiful music while you're, doing the housework or the laundry, or you're driving to work, and you can see what omens come to you. There's so many different ways that you can do this work. So don't be pigeonholed, or just don't have this idea that it's not for you because you're too busy to get outside into some, panoramic natural environment, because that's not what you need and it's not how it works. And even if you don't have much time, there's so many ways that you can do this work in a busy modern life. And then finally, it's really hard to get this work wrong. I often have students who worry about getting it wrong. They're like, I don't think I could do this by myself. I prefer to be guided. I'm not going to open space properly. I'm not going to do this or that properly. But that really is taking on too much responsibility to yourself here. Our guides know our hearts. They will support you in your core intentions. So if you follow the 6 guiding principles, you open your space, light a candle, the space is open, keep me safe. I feel the ancestors around me, the trees are here, I see birds out the window, and I invite the energy of the birds into this space to support me. The words don't matter, it's the intention that matters. And the guides know. So please do not worry that you're going to get it wrong. And people who tell you that you get it wrong, or you have to do it in a certain way or follow a certain method, are not teachers who I would like to learn from. What I teach here is I teach you how to grow confidence in your own abilities, how to connect in a way that works for you, not to be dogmatic and fearful. There's just so many ways to connect with this work, and I will help you to find a way that works for you. Okay? Now, we're nearly there. We're at the end. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you for joining me. Don't forget, if you have any questions relating to this workshop, you're welcome to ask in the courses section of the questions, and share anything you'd like to share. And because you made it all the way to the end of these videos, and you've shown that you're not a dabbler, that you're really here to do the work, and that you're committed enough to watch these offerings that I've poured my heart and soul into in reciprocity, you can expect a special invitation in your inbox very soon. Okay, thank you so much for joining me in the 3 Cauldrons workshop. Whether I hear from you again or not, whether we work together again or not, I hope you've taken some really useful, practical information from this workshop, and that you can go off and thrive in your life with your 3 cauldrons upright, filled, thriving, and bubbling, and creating the magical human life that we all deserve, and that I know you certainly deserve. All right, much love, and hopefully we'll speak to you really soon.